Islamic Studies is the study of how people have talked about Islam, how people have produced Islam in different ways. And that can be Muslims and non-Muslims, through their words or through their actions, sought to define Islam. And Islamic Studies studies those activities. They study these attempts at definition. We're interested in how people have defined Islam and to what purpose.
I think the book in itself actually underlines the fluidity of the idea of Islamic studies, and that's, I think, why we spent such a long time writing an introduction where you can see and follow the history of how Islamic studies has appeared academically in Europe and North America. It's not an academic discipline bound by theory like sociology. It's something else. It's empirically defined, but that empirical definition is always in flux. So over time, the context influences what becomes Islamic studies, and that will continue in the future as well.
And what was interesting to see the ramifications of this anti-essentialist approach across different disciplines, and to look for what kinds of scholarship was produced, treating Islam as an open variable rather than something that precedes scholarship. And seeing it that anti-essentialism also allows people to say there's no core to Islam. There's not like a sort of kernel of an eternal truth from which other things emerge. It's much more, it's more like an onion, I guess, sort of different layers, but not necessarily all coming out of that inner kernel. To my mind, a non-essential approach to the study of religion or to any phenomenon is one that leaves its definition open and sees it as a category that's going to be defined in different ways by different people all the time. And the role of scholars, the role of academic scholars, at least when they're not acting in a normative way, they're not acting as theologians or as political philosophers, we're not trying to tell people how to behave. Our role is instead to study these discourses and say, what do these discourses tell us about the societies and the individuals that produce them? But the other strand I'd like to bring out across the papers is a number of them were engaging with three theorists in particular, that is Edward Said, famous for his work on Orientalism, but also Talal Asad and Shahab Ahmed, whose works have influenced the approach of a lot of people in Islamic studies. So one of the things we were engaging with is those major works in the discipline, and thinking through them in a kind of post 9/11 context.
But also a critical approach, a shift perhaps in Islamic studies, that you also start to think and become critically aware of the flaws of some of the thinking that's been in discipline over the years. So here I think we have a very healthy relationship to famous names like Talal Asad and Edward Said, which I think is also a good sign of a development in a discipline, that you can actually have that type of criticism explored today.
Yes, it was not a deferential book in that sense. Yeah, I think all of the papers have a notion of Islam as an evolving tradition, something that changes over time and in different contexts, but also as something without firm boundaries with other forms of culture. I think that's also important.